Welcome back. As you know, I'm Eli the Computer Guy here for the Daily Blob, where we gotta say, it's so sad. It's so sad when megalomaniacs fall out of love. Right, when two megalomaniacs come together in pure passion, it's a thing of beauty and gives everybody hope. But then sometimes, right, the love affair doesn't last very long, and then everything goes to hell. And everybody pays, So I think this is an interesting story about Microsoft and OpenAI and Anthropic. Maybe a little bit of a love triangle in the technology world, because Microsoft had invested a lot of money in OpenAI not that long ago. They put $10 billion. Remember when $10 billion was a lot of money, right? About 2 years ago, a year and a half, 2 years ago, it was like, wow, $10 billion. That's a lot of money, right? Back in those old days, right? Microsoft put $10 billion into OpenAI. And one of the interesting things with that particular agreement is it really seemed like Microsoft was trying to basically monopolize OpenAI, right? The concept is OpenAI was supposed to be this AI company for everybody, whether or not it was, that was the story. Microsoft comes in, basically they give them this massive investment, plus they get an agreement for OpenAI to use their data centers. And so basically it looked like OpenAI was essentially being captured by Microsoft. And what's been interesting since then is how that relationship has just got like it's just gotten weird, not necessarily horrible, but just weird, right? So OpenAI is now creating agreements with other companies. They just closed a $300 billion agreement with Oracle. They've closed an agreement with Google. They're doing a lot of that kind of stuff. At the exact same time, Microsoft is literally coming out with their own models. So Microsoft has their own set of models, and you're just getting this weird, I don't know. I don't know what is going on, and it will be curious to see at the end of the day who the real winners and losers in this whole AI race are. But basically, coming from TechCrunch here, Microsoft to lessen reliance on OpenAI by buying AI from rival Anthropic. Right, so Microsoft will now be using OpenAI. They will now be using their own models, and they will also be buying AI services from Anthropic, which is curious, and it's also curious to see how all these big technology companies are working together so incestuously. I've been talking about this a lot lately, where in the past there was a lot of room for startup companies to really be able to come in and be able to succeed. But it does seem like now that these highly invested technology companies essentially are sucking all of the oxygen, all of the resources out of the environment so that they can only play together, right? With Microsoft now going to Anthropic, right? It's a $183 billion startup company. It's kind of curious to see how this is all playing out. And I do wonder how that will work out at the end of the day. I think my argument is that these companies are just valued way too much, and I do think they'll basically implode upon their valuations, but it will be interesting to see what happens along the way. Microsoft will pay to use Anthropic's AI in Office 365 apps, the information reports, citing two sources. The move means that Anthropic tech will help power new features in Word, Excel, Outlook, and PowerPoint alongside OpenAI's, marking the end of Microsoft's previous reliance solely on the ChatGPT maker for its productivity suite. Microsoft's move to diversify its AI partnerships comes amid a growing rift with OpenAI, which has pursued its own infrastructure projects as well as potential LinkedIn competitor. Microsoft's Anthropic deal also comes as the company negotiates a new deal with OpenAI to secure access to its AI models after a pending for-profit restructuring. But the information says that the move isn't a negotiating tactic. Leaders at Microsoft believe Anthropic's latest models, Claude Sonnet 4, specifically perform better than OpenAI's in certain functions like creating aesthetically pleasing PowerPoint presentations. And I found that to be interesting. So that's one of the things I've talked about with these models for a little while now. Like we had, so we did a fireside chat with the VP for AI models over at IBM. And he was talking about how they trained their Granite model. So IBM has open source models, and they're called the Granite model. So there's a number of different parameter sizes. You can go out and you can use them. One of the curious things, right, being IBM. So IBM is old guard tech industry, blue chip old guard tech industry. They're used to dealing with, blue chip companies. They're used to dealing with the government and that type of thing. And so one of the things that they're concerned about is that if they're using artificial intelligence, they want to make sure that their AI is like using the Queen's English, right? That it's using verbiage and words that should be used in a business environment. Not simply that the sentence is correct, but also that you say it properly, right? If you look at XAI, if you look at Grok, right? Elon Musk is very proud that his AI is not safe for work. IBM looked at that and had a small fucking heart attack at the idea. So basically, they trained their model so that it would be safe for work, right? If you are going to be using a model to craft business emails, do you want to use Grok or do you want to use Granite, right? That's something to really be thinking about there. And that's one of the curious things with a lot of these models is what they're learning. Essentially, right, makes sense, is the stuff that you train the models on will lead to output being better in certain areas. So we talked about this with the UAE models. So United Arab Emirates, they've come out with their own open source models to try to compete with fucking everybody, right? But one of their things is that it's better at math, science, and coding. Right, so you may not want it to write an email to your grandma or whatever, but if you're doing like math, science, and coding, they focused the training into those particular areas so that it will give better results in those particular areas. And I think this is going to be an interesting thing to kind of consider when we start thinking about artificial intelligence going forward. Is you've got so many models, you've got thousands of models at this point, and so the idea of picking the models that are most appropriate for the task at hand. Not the best, right? This is one of the things I laugh about. I talk about this like Gamers Nexus, right? That there are all these models, right? There's these new frontier models that come out, and then they put out they put out all these fucking charts that don't make a goddamn bit of sense, right? Like Gamers Nexus. Like I watch Gamers Nexus sometimes, and it's hilarious, right? It's 20 minutes of spreadsheets. What? When you say, I do not understand the youth of America, you ain't lying. When did looking at 20 minutes of spreadsheets become something exciting for 14-year-olds? Anyways, Gamers Nexus is tapping into a vein of interest I wouldn't even know existed. This is why diversity is important. I wouldn't do that. But anyways, right, I think it's funny because I look at it. And if I'm buying a graphics card, what will I do? I will look at the software that I'll be using. I'll be looking at the software that I'll be using, and I'll look at the load and the environment and that kind of thing that I'm going to put it into, and then I'll do some fucking math. I'll do some math on it. I'll find out what the hell my budget is, right? I'll do the math to figure out how many resources I need on the graphics card. And then with me, I'll just increase that by 25% just to give me a buffer. Then I'll ask to verify how much money I've got. If they give me enough money, I'll put a 200% buffer on there because I will always buy more resources if I'm able to buy the resources, and then I'll buy that product, right? That's how I would buy a GPU, right? But the funny thing is you sit there and they've got all these charts and all these fucking situations, right? And I would argue most of it probably doesn't mean a whole hell of a lot to anybody. But what I find is curious is take that and you go to the AI world, and that's basically what we're getting now, these AI models, these frontier models, right? We have the latest OpenAI model. We have the latest DeepSeek model. We have the latest Claude model or whatever else. And they create these charts, and it's like, look, it does better here and worse here and better here half the time. And like, we're literally getting to the point where the performance charts for models basically have lost relevance and meaning. What does that actually mean for outputs? And that's where I think you really need to be thinking about that now. If you're going to be implementing artificial intelligence into your systems, start focusing more, again, on resource consumption, because hardware resources cost real money. And then what are the outputs you need, right? I talk about this with the Pi model. So Microsoft, they came out with their 3.5 model, PHI. It's PHI. I think it's 3.5. It was 3, now it's 3.5. Anyways, it's a small model. It's like a 2 billion parameter model. The thing that I'm impressed with it though is actually pretty good, right? If you want to make regex really fucking simple, the Pi model is great, right? If you hate regex, Pi is for you. Anyways, but one of the things to think about, right, is a 2 billion parameter model you can fucking run on this thing. You can run on this thing with reasonable response times. And so depending on what you're trying to accomplish, that might be fine. It's like, hey, I want to scan through every single email, right? We have an archive of emails for the entire company that goes back 20 years, right? For SEC compliance or whatever. I think you have to archive for 10 years, something like that. We have this archive. I want to scan through all of these emails and I want to be able to pull out specific information, right? I want to pull out email addresses, telephone numbers, whatever. Maybe basically dump this into some kind of marketing solution. Like, oh, look, we're gonna scan through our old communications, grab this information so that we can dump it into our new sales or marketing solution, so that our salespeople can go out and bug the shit out of people that don't want to hear from them, right? So honestly, a Pi model on a piece of crap hardware, right? All it does is it's just churning through emails. Pops up one email, grab this information, dump in the database, pumps it, right? Because that's one thing I got back before. Like some people argued about that. They're like, well, Eli, it's the enterprise world. Eli, the enterprise, why are you holding up a 13-year-old computer and talking about the enterprise world? That obviously won't work. Well, again, if you have this on 24/7, right? If you have this on 24/7, processing historical information, do you really care if the response is a fraction of a second or 10 seconds, right? Because that's what you gotta think about, right? If I'm going to create a chatbot, I will get a very powerful model, most likely, and put it on really good hardware, really expensive hardware, right? Because it's a chatbot. We're communicating, right? The longer the lag, the longer the latency between when I ask it a question and I get a response, the more I'm going to get pissed off, the more likely I'm going to go away, right? So I might spend $40,000 on a GPU, right, for my chatbot platform that I'm creating because response time is vitally important in that particular thing, right? There's a whole bunch of people that go out and they test web apps and that type of thing, and they find the average user, if your page does not load within like 1.5 seconds, they go somewhere else, right? So that's important. That's important. On the other hand, if you have like historical information, again, think about if you're scanning through old emails, a shit ton of old emails, or imagine you're scanning through pictures, right? So you're doing taxonomy for pictures. Give me tags and give me a description of what's in this picture. Right? If you have a system that's just processing 24/7, right? Even if it takes 10 seconds, let's say 10 seconds per response, which is probably is a little bit high. But anyways, let's say it takes 10 seconds per response. You're still getting 6 responses per minute, right? You're getting 360 responses per hour, and oh Christ. I don't know, 1,400, I'm not great with that, 1,400 or something like responses per day, right? Which then goes out to 10,000 responses per week, right? So Matt, you think about this, if you're going through historical information, getting 10,000 or 12,000, let's say, responses in a week, that might be fun, even though it's slower, right? And that's the kind of thing I think you need to start thinking about more when you start thinking about these AI solutions, is start really thinking about, cost benefit analysis, return on investment, what the output should actually look like, that kind of thing, right? Are you pulling out JSON values? Are you pulling out values that are going to turn into some kind of JSON, or are you actually writing an email to somebody, or are you creating a PowerPoint presentation, or are you pulling taxonomy, that type of thing? And so I think that's the curious thing to be thinking about here. So basically, apparently, Anthropic is better at creating PowerPoints. Who would have known? And this is an important thing with like reading this kind of stuff and taking a look, again, especially with your solutions. Because oh my God, there's so many options out there. There's so many options, and it gets confusing. It literally gets confusing trying to figure out what product you should use. And so one of the things is taking a look at this is just figuring out what these different products are better at and why people use different products. So anyways, what do you think about this? What do you think about the love affair between Microsoft and OpenAI? Seems to be getting a little bit frigid. And sexy, sexy young Anthropic is coming in to add a little spice to the relationship. What do you think about that? What do you think about them? Microsoft using Anthropic for their Office 365 apps. What do you think about this? Since Microsoft isn't using specific vendors, what do you think about your data? You literally now don't know where your data is going. Like it's curious. Like we talked Martin Lehner, he runs a managed service provider company up in the Yukon. We had him on for a fireside chat a few months ago. And one of the reasons he said he doesn't use Azure is because I guess Azure has a Canadian data center, but for the replication and their disaster recovery solutions, he doesn't know where data gets replicated to. Like, so when you go to access it, so as a user, as a Canadian user, when you go to access the data, you go to the Canadian data center, right? So you're like, oh, okay, it's contained within our geography. The problem is, again, with disaster recovery, resilience, that type of thing, right? If a tornado or a nuclear bomb goes through, Microsoft wants to make sure that data doesn't disappear. And so when the data gets replicated out for disaster recovery, that data, they don't know. They do not tell you exactly where that data is going. That data could be going to the United States. That data could be going to China for all you know, right? And so that's one of the things he talks about why he doesn't use Azure. Is because he does not know what happens to the data, really what happens to the data once you put that into the Azure data center. One of the curious things with all this OpenAI stuff, one of the things I've warned you about, right? Every time you hand data over to any kind of service-oriented architecture, right? Any kind of API call, you don't really know what happens to the data on the other side, right? You hand the data, you get the response, you're like, it worked. Yeah, but you don't know what else happened to that data if it gets logged, if it gets trained on, if metadata is pulled out of it and they try to find some statistical probabilities about something, right? So one of the curious things here with these big tech companies using these different AI services is there does become an interesting question of what happens to your data, right? If I go and I buy services from Microsoft, I'm expecting, per their terms of service or per the contract that I sign, that the data will be dealt with in a particular way, right? So if Microsoft housed all of the models and ran all of the models, it's pretty easy to have an expectation of what's going to happen to your data. What becomes interesting is when they start farming out these services. Sometimes it's OpenAI, sometimes it's Anthropic, sometimes it's going to be other things. Do you feel comfortable within that data integrity environment that, you know, your data is being dealt with properly all the time? I think that's one of the curious things here that I would be a little bit concerned about. So anyways, what do you think about this? What do you think about the three-way relationship between Microsoft, OpenAI, and Anthropic? Do you think OpenAI can go to the gym, lose a couple of pounds, and bring the fire back to the relationship? Or does young, spanky Anthropic just have more than OpenAI has to offer? What do you think about this with using different models in order to do very specifically different types of tasks? And how does it affect, you know, building your types of platforms and that type of thing? I don't know. Put your thoughts. Put your thoughts down below. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a thumbs down. Call me amazing. Call me a moron. Just be a real alpha dog and do it in the comment section. Remember, SiliconDojo.com exists. We are going to be having classes in Durham, in-person classes in Durham coming up, in-person classes here in Asheville, North Carolina. We are doing fireside chats. We have a founder of a $2 billion cybersecurity company. He is coming on pretty soon. So if you're interested in any of that, you can become a member of SiliconDojo.com for free. And then you'll be on the newsletter list and that type of thing. And with that, see y'all later.